Welcome to the Early Morning Light Podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Early, and on this podcast, I share life-changing tips, tools, information, motivation, and inspiration to bring light to your life as you tune in week after week. And I tell you, right now, I'm looking for some motivation to deal with this heat. It is hot in her. And some of y'all know what I mean, hot in her. Cincinnati is really hot right now. I'm talking 95 plus degrees every day, pushing 100 for the last several days. I don't know where you are, but it is really hot. I mean, the kind of heat that is just offensive. I mean, you go to the door, you open the door, and you get offended when you open because it's so hot right now. And I'm in no way complaining, not really. I'm just making an observation. It's really hot here in Cincinnati. So wherever you are, I hope it's cooler and that you're more comfortable than it is as we drive and walk and hang out as we have to outside in Cincinnati right now. It's really hot. So this week, I want to talk about something that just kind of hit me this week. And I'm always being kind of hit by things, I try to stay tuned in. I was just thinking about something that I decided recently to focus on. And I'm going to title this one, Back to the Basics. And what I mean by that is that I have, as I mentioned before, have been able to witness my son and other people go through some injuries in sports. And I know I talk about sports a lot, but that's just, it's always been a big part of my world. So, if you're offended by that, then I'm sorry, but it's a big part of my world. Anyway, so one of the things that I noticed as I watched and witnessed the recovery process from injuries is that one of the things that happens is that when someone, let's say someone has, let's call it ACL injury, which is what I was around a couple of times. When the person comes out of that, the surgery and is set up for the rehab process, one of the things that they have to do is go back to the basics of balance and getting the muscles and to fire, that neural activity that gets things to fire properly. And in some ways, like retraining that stuff, like back to the basics of balance exercises and, and then eventually the strength exercises to rebuild the strength in the whatever the muscle or joint. So it's really a basic process where, folks are just balancing on two legs, balancing on one leg, and just tuning into that, what they call that proprioceptive process. But it's really a basic process that starts at the basics and works back up to the person is ready for kind of the return to sport training, which is obviously more of the plyometrics and the running and the heavier lifting and all that stuff. But they really go back to the basics. And that's really the only way to do it. So recently, I had a little lull, or I'm going to call it a lull, but I had a phase where I wasn't working out as much as I typically do. I'd missed a couple weeks. Probably even longer than that. I'm being really generous to myself. Probably about 3.5 weeks, almost a month that I hadn't done anything but push-ups and crunches, sit-ups, things at home. I typically don't do that because not for that long, because I start to notice the physical effects of that. I don't feel as strong. I don't feel as energized. My mood's probably worse. So I typically don't go that long, but I did. At my age, it's a little harder sometimes to get myself going, but exercise has always been a big part of my world. But anyway, so I just decided when I went back that I was just going to start back at the basics. I was going to do balance work, core work, just those basic things that we should probably be doing most of the time anyway, incorporating into our whatever routines we're doing anyway. But decided to go back. And so I was thinking about that today as, after the workout, I was working on something else that, wasn't part of the workout. What would change, or how would your situation or your life change if you made a commitment to go back to the basics in certain areas of your life? And then what would that mean? Like, what are the basics for you in your relationships with people? What would back to the basics mean? Does it mean if you're in a relationship, maybe you just start dating again like you did before life happens? Maybe that's an area in your career, your job, your business, whatever you're doing. Maybe it means going back to maybe a routine that you used to do that was effective. One of the things that we know about going back to the basics and incorporating some of the basic things in exercise is that there's some pretty distinct benefits to doing that. When you talk about the core work and the balance work that you do, that will help people avoid injuries. It actually helps establish a more stable core. Your abs and your core work can actually make the body more stable in its movements, which obviously also helps with injury prevention. It can also, by going back to those basics, it can actually improve your performance in your more intense workouts or whatever your program is, whether it's a strength workout or you're doing power stuff, whatever it is. It can just going back to those or incorporating, the basic balance and core work, the stability work, can actually enhance all three of those areas of your workout world or your competition world, whatever you're doing. So, so today I was just thinking, like, how does that apply, or would that apply to other areas of your life? What are some things that you could do that would be considered going back to the basics? What are some of those things that you've gotten away from that you used to do? Maybe it's your spiritual life, if that's important to you. It is for me. Maybe it's your daily reading, or your devotional or devotion time. Maybe that's a basic thing that you need to get back to. Maybe for some people, it's just going to church, if that's part of your world. Like I said, in your business, maybe it means getting back to what are some of those things that you get the most bang out of your time for, like the things that are producing the most significant results for you in that area of your life. For some people, it might mean you need to read more, maybe get more education, more personal development, as a basic thing. So I just wanted to pose that question today. What would it mean for you to go back to the basics? What does that look like for you if you were to make that commitment to go back to the basic things that allowed you to be more effective in the different areas of your life? What would those things be? And then what would be the benefits of doing those things? Like, it's important to know that, like, not just making this shift and going back to the basics, but what I think it's always important to know, not just what to do, but know why you're doing it. So what's the benefit of going back to the basics? And I would encourage people to write those things down. Maybe make a list. It doesn't have to be super exhaustive, but just a list of the basic things in the areas of your life that are important to you, those value areas. What are the basics? And what would it mean if you went back to those and started to incorporate those things into your life? What would be the benefits of those? And then what's the soonest that you can start getting back to the basics of those areas of your life? Just want you to think about that. I've already started to do that in the area of fitness for me. And, and if you're around me, you see me, please encourage me to stick to it, to going back to the basics. I welcome that if I see you, or, if you're around me anytime soon, because that is a focus for me. But I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that if you were to make that commitment to go back to basics, that you're going to see some significant benefits, and that life is going to start moving in a direction closer to where you really want to go than maybe you were going before you went back to the basics. It's just so important that we do this. In the fitness world, like I said, there's injury prevention, there's just stabilizing the body. But what would it mean to stabilize your life by going back to the basics, the things that are effective? I'm not talking about being perfect, but what are the things that I could go back to, that I could reincorporate, that I've gotten away from, that will allow me to be more effective in my life and get more out of my life? That's it. That's what I had for today. As I started with, I hope wherever you are, that you're not burning up, or you're not as hot as it is here in Cincinnati. But if you are, be careful out there, and thank you for tuning in to the Early Morning Light podcast. Please continue to tune in, like this podcast on all the platforms, and I will talk to you soon.